Hello, welcome to another edition of the Pace Report. I'm Brian Pace, reporting from Birdland here in New York City. Blessing the band stage tonight is saxophonist, composer, and clinician Ravi Coltrane. As you might know, earlier this year, Ravi took part of a very special project which has now been released on ECM Records with NEA jazz master and drummer DeJohnette, as well as bassist Matthew Garrison, who's the son of the legendary Jimmy Garrison. I had a chance to sit down and break bread with Mr. Coltrane about this recent project, as well as talk about the importance of, one, fronting your own band and the keys and the tools to front the band, whether it's writing for a group and an ensemble, as well as taking the extra steps of woodshedding and perfecting the craft. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the sounds and highlights of Mr. Ravi Coltrane live here at Birdland as part of the Pace Report here in New York City. One of the things I told you earlier in passing is one of the things I want to leave in these videos is the perspective of a musician and some of the things that you are very, 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 very fluid with as far as what you do is the practicing part. And I want to ask you, how do you designate your time and how do you develop your time to focus on the things that you need to do as far as your technique, your composing, as well as the most important part, putting your band together and recording and touring?
Well, that's really the most challenging the most challenging thing about being a musician, a working musician, especially here in New York City. I got here in '91, and I had a lot more free time. I had a lot more physical energy, and it's easy to just focus it all and channel it all into your work, all into your music. But now I have grown children. I have a 17-year-old. Well, he'll be 17 in the fall. He's bigger than me now. Dude's working out and everything. I have a 10-year-old. And I don't have that same time to work on the music. I don't have that same type of energy to work on the music. Well, it's just about finding a balance, and it can be tricky sometimes. We're on the road. It feels like constantly. And often I bring my work on the road with me. I bring keyboards and my computers. I'm try to keep my writing up on the road. But it can be very, very challenging. Very, very challenging. I'm trying to cut more time into my schedule to just to study, just to work at and just to practice working is great. The music develops on the road. Yet at the same time, there's still a lot of personal work that we have to put in on our own. I think for years I've been wanting to work less so I could spend more time studying. But it's hard to do that. But I'm hoping in the next few years I can sort of build in specific times of the year for me to really kind of stay in New York, focus on studying and practicing.
What are some of the things that you are intending on studying? What are some of the things that are going to keep your ambition and your drive going musically?
I still feel I'm still working on a lot of things that I've always wanted to work on. My sound and my time and harmonic, facility. I think that music, it's a very deep ocean, and we're all going to swim in that ocean if we're going to go into this line of work. But how far out you swim and how deep you swim, that's another story. That's something that we all have to try to commit to going as far as we can go. So I still am very anxious and about continuing the work that I feel I started doing right from the very beginning, but just going deeper and going as far as I can go.
There's a thing, mission and purpose. Where are you at musically? Are you fulfilling your purpose as a musician, or do you have a mission to write and compose and do other things outside of the music?
I feel time slips away from you too. It's like you can have lots of musical aspirations and dreams and feel like, well, I want to do this someday, and I want to do this someday, and I want to do this someday. But you could say that easily for 10 years, 20 years. And you're still thinking 20 years out in the future, So I still have, again, a lot of the same goals and a lot of the same ambitions as I had when I was young, when I first, came out and started, So I figure as long as I live, I'll have that opportunity to try to, continue to make those steps.
played and backed a lot of people when you were a young guppy here in New York City. And leading your first band and knowing that you had to step out as a leader, that takes a lot of galls. How did you know professionally that you were ready? And how did you also know that it was timing? And how do you put your bands together? Because sometimes your bands have fluctuated throughout your career.
Well, I think I started leading groups maybe around 94, 93, 96. But I hadn't put a record out as a leader. I was here in New York, and little clubs were opening up here and there, and and I was working a lot as a sideman. And every now and then, someone's going to say, "Hey, man, why don't you bring a band in?" I think I started working at the Zinc Bar, kind of maybe '94, when the Iridium opened up. Originally, they were right across from Lincoln Center. I think that was really my first. That was my first week as a leader in New York. Playing a nice new jazz room. That was '94. And it's one of those things you have to do. I was never in a rush to become a leader exclusively or primarily, just because being a sideman, you get to play with great musicians, hopefully, and there's less of a pressure, of course, when you're a sideman. You don't have to be completely responsible for all the material and the direction of the gigs and things like that. You can just kind of sit back and absorb and take things in. And I had some great leaders that I worked with. From Elvin Jones to Jack DeJohnette to Rashid Ali. To Kenny Barrett, Joanne Brackeen was a huge influence on me. Working in her band was a real push for me. I worked in Wallace Roney's band and Jerry Allen's band. A drummer named Jerry Gibbs. I got a lot playing his wild and crazy music. Steve Coleman. I got a tremendous amount working with Steve. Steve really kind of just changed my whole way of thinking about things. Um, it was great to be able to take all of that, those experiences and all of that information and to try to forge your own path with it. So I was having a great time being a sideman. I was not in any rush to be a leader, but things sort of happen organically, and they happen in their own time. I think I made my first record in '99. It was, again, I was never in a rush to be a leader, but when things happened, they finally did. And, so I'm still doing a little bit of sideman work, but I do enjoy putting groups together. My first band maybe. My first real band, I guess, was started in '99 with Steve Haas on drums, Andy Millen on piano, and Philly's own Daryl Hall on bass. It was great to have a working band, to go out on the road, do gigs, and that band stayed together for a few years. But the next real group I had featured EJ in it, EJ Strickland, Louis Perdomo, and Drew Grass. That band was together for almost 10 years, and that was a very, it was great to work with that group. I got a lot from working with those gentlemen. Uh, we did a few records together, Influx and Blending Times. It features that group. Um, we were together for about 10 years, and then things were starting to move in the directions they were moving in. So um, I started looking to play with some other players around 2011 or 2012, I guess. It's when I started working with Desron and Jonathan Blake and David Varese, and yeah, again, very talented and unique players. And again, you get so much from who you associate with musically. Whether you're the leader or not. I mean, it's really important that the makeup of the group, the balance, the chemistry of it. It's really important. Uh, and being in New York, we're fortunate. I mean, plenty of great players here. Plenty of great players.
What is it that you demand from the musicians that you have in your quartet? And what are some of the things that the musicians demand of you as a leader, because there's a great chemistry. I love Orrin Evans. Orrin is such a soulful and a very, very dominant force in his playing and as a leader himself.
For sure.
And Desron's the same way.
Yeah.
He's a great linebacker. If we were playing sports, he'd be a perfect linebacker.
For sure, for sure, for sure. You know, I can't say enough about these young, fabulous players. This has been an interesting week. I will work a few different spots in New York and try to present different groups. Birdland is such a kind of open and very, they kind of, kind of let us do what we want to do. So I thought it would be nice just to do a week where we had special guests and the group was kind of a newly formed group. But yeah, I can't say enough about these guys.
Ravi, you have had an amazing year. First of all, I want to just congratulate you on this project with Mr. Garrison and Mr. DeJohnette. I mean, I need to ask you, in working in this project, how did this come together?
Well, I've met Jack probably in the late 80s. And when I moved to New York, Jack had actually asked me to work on a record that he was producing for a young trumpet player named Ryan Kaiser. He's still on the scene today. So I met him around 91. I met him earlier, but I met him in 91 and we started, hanging out and working together. He kind of became kind of a father figure in many, many ways. And at the same time, he was a father figure to a young Matthew Garrison, who actually was living with Jack during that time, in the early 90s. And the three of us, I think we played one gig together, maybe in 1992. And I continued an association with Matthew, and I continued an association with Jack. But the three of us hadn't played together since that one occasion in the early 90s. So we were kind of bugging Jack about putting that group back together, and he finally did. So I think we've been playing about the last 4 years now.
That'll do it again for another edition of the Pace Report. I'm Brian Pace, reporting from Birdland here in New York City. I'd like to personally thank the incomparable Ravi Coltrane for his time, also the staff and management here at Birdland for their warm hospitality. As always, please visit my website, www.thepacereport.com, for my weekly column as well as my past segments. Until next time, remember, if it's in the groove, it'll make you move. Till next time, peace.